All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, in a surprise move today, the Indianapolis Colts have decided to part with head coach Frank Reich. Now, in four plus seasons with the Colts, Reich's record was 40, 33, and 1 in the regular season with a pair of trips to the playoffs. But Reich's time with the Colts was mired by issues at the most important position on the football field. Since 2018, the Colts have had six different starting quarterbacks. The shocking retirement of Andrew Luck just prior to the start of the 2019 season left the Colts scrambling at quarterback, and they've been unable to recover since. Jacoby Brissett was the starting quarterback in 2019. Philip Rivers was the starting quarterback in 2020, and then he retired. Carson Wentz was acquired from the Philadelphia Eagles last season, and he was supposed to be the guy, and that did not end well. This past off season, we saw the Colts trade Ryan to Washington and then go out, pardon me, trade Wentz to Washington rather, and then acquire veteran quarterback Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons. And in less than half a season, Ryan's been benched. He's basically on the IR. And now Sam Ellinger is the guy at quarterback for Indianapolis. And you look at this Colts offense this season, it's been putrid at best. They've been stuck in the mud so much. I mean, for starters, just look at these last three games. Indianapolis has lost all three games, and in those three games, they had a combined 3 points. And I think the bottom really fell out for the Colts yesterday as they fell on the road to the New England Patriots by the score of 26-3. If you look at that contest, Indianapolis was 0 of 14 on third down. That is very hard to do in an NFL game. And I mean, New England was not a juggernaut on offense themselves, but you're talking about for an entire NFL game, the Colts were only able to sustain or get rather 121 total yards. That's not going to get it done. The bottom line is Indianapolis, they're near the bottom of the NFL in total offense. But for my money, I don't put all of this blame on Frank Reich, who was fired. What about Chris Ballard as well? Because he's a team's general manager. And if you're going to fire a head coach like Reich, I think, if you're the Colts, you want to just go over and start fresh. Because, I mean, let's not forget about it. I mean, the Colts, and just like the title of this podcast, they basically been trying to do this with spit and glue as far as fixing the quarterback position, quote unquote. But with that said, in that time since Luck retired, Indianapolis has not gone out there and really drafted a quality quarterback and been able to develop said guy. It's all about trying to plug and fix with veteran guys. And for the most part, it has not worked. They got to the playoffs with Philip Rivers a couple of years ago, but you could see the Philly Riv was on his last leg. Carson Wentz was supposed to be the guy last year, but it basically came down to the running ability of Jonathan Taylor because in the 9 games that the Colts won last year, JT had more than 100 yards. And in each of the Colts' losses, he had less than 100 yards. And of course, the most telling thing for Carson Wentz last year was Indy was 9-6 heading into their final 2 games, win one of those contests, and you go to the playoffs. And the Colts lost both at home to the Raiders. And then on the road, they got dominated by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And you look at this year, the Colts, things just got started on the wrong foot. And, they were expected to be better. You figured, okay, looking at their schedule out of the gate, you're on the road for Houston and Jacksonville. And the first 2 weeks of the season, 2 winnable games. You go 0-1-1 in that scenario. And Indy had to fight, scrap, and claw just to come back in week number 1, just to tie Houston to send the game into overtime. And then subsequently they tied. And then they just got dominated by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Typical still, Indy can't keep up with the Titans. They've been swept already in the season series. Last week's debacle at home against the Washington Commanders. And then, of course, yesterday against the New England Patriots. But like I said, Chris Ballard, the GM, deserves plenty of blame for this. I'm not putting all of this on Reich, but a weird twist of turns for this whole scenario, in my opinion, was that the Colts are naming Jeff Saturday as the team's interim head coach. And I mean, Saturday was a Pro Bowl center for many of those Colts teams when Peyton Manning was a quarterback. He had previous experience as a high school coach. And then also, he's been a team consultant, but most people know him recently, from his work on ESPN. And I just don't see how the Colts go from Frank Reich to Jeff Saturday, a guy who has not had any experience as a coach in the NFL, even as an assistant coach in the NFL midseason. This whole thing right here is weird to say the least. And I'll tell you like this just did not happen overnight. You just can't wake up one morning if you're Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard and say, hey, you know what? We're going to give Jeff Saturday the job. This is something that was definitely in the works for a while. And the Indianapolis Colts organization just flat out saw an opening to go out there and make this happen. It's very tricky, though, when you're hiring somebody to be an interim head coach and this person has no previous experience at the NFL level, not as a coordinator, not as a position coach, anything like that. And typically, when you see head coaches fired mid-season, generally an offensive coordinator takes over, a defensive coordinator takes over, maybe a position coach takes over, but not where you have somebody who has never coached at the NFL level just come in and take over the job. It's very weird. And when you factor all of that stuff in, bringing in Jeff Saturday, not really being able to shore up the quarterback position. This Colts team, this Colts organization is on the fast track to nowhere because let's not forget the reason why Andrew Luck prematurely retired is due to the fact that the Colts did not do a good enough job in regards to putting talent around him on the offensive side of the ball. More importantly, the Colts did not do a good enough job in protecting him up front with their offensive line. And just like the Colts organization took Peyton Manning for granted for many years, they were doing the same thing with Andrew Luck, just figuring we can just patch anybody in here. And Andrew Luck is good enough to take us where we want to go. But guess what? The injuries piled up for Andrew Luck and the way that he played. And he said, you know what? I have a degree in mechanical engineering from Stanford. I don't need you. I don't need this. And he basically took his ball and went home. That's where the problem started. They have not gotten better. This organization has yet to find themselves a new franchise quarterback, and they're paying for it. And the only thing, when you look at this team, especially in recent years under Frank Reich, that really held this team back was their lack of quarterback. Because guess what? The way that Jonathan Taylor was running last year, the way that the Colts defense was playing last year, you had yourself a better quarterback than Carson Wentz. You're talking about a team that not only made the postseason, but they could have done plenty of damage when they got there. Jim Irsay really needed to push the reset button altogether here. And I say, if you're going to fire the coach, fire the general manager as well and start over. This right here is a train wreck. And it's sad because this is a very winnable division because you look at the Titans, you look at the Jaguars, you look at the Texans. This is a winnable division because the Jags, they're trying to get it together. The Texans are clearly in rebuild mode, and the Titans are a runaway freight train due to their running game and their defense. But nonetheless, Indy had a shot, and at the rate that they're going right now, they simply just shot themselves in the foot. Very questionable day around the Colts organization. Let's see where this goes. But I guarantee you, the hiring of Jeff Saturday after you fire Frank Reich is very questionable at best for the Colts, in my opinion. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. TFX, how's it going out there? Thanks for chiming in as always. Definitely appreciate the love. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, saying take care. And thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube.